My name's Hugh Hook. I'm the principal reviewer and writer for The Real Review. And The Real Review has been going for quite a few years now. It's the most important in terms of readership and following reviewing platform in Australia and New Zealand. We review about 10,000 wines a year. We pride ourselves on our integrity and our independence from the industry and the trade. We don't sell wine, we don't advertise wine on our site. We try to keep our nose as clean as possible. The whole raison d'etre of The Real Review is to recommend good wine so that you, the wine drinker, can know what to buy, what's good value at any given time. We try to keep you informed. That's what we're all about. One of the things that we do at The Real Review to try and preserve the opaqueness, the authenticity, the honesty, if that's the right word, of what we do, is to taste as blind as we can. And that means that when the wines are lined up in front of us, I usually do 2 dozen at a time. The glasses will be lined up on numbered spaces. I won't know what the wines are. I will taste them, judge them, describe them, give them a score, and then I'll reveal them and make sure I haven't made any terrible mistakes. But the first pass is always blind, and that's fairly critical to what we do. We score out of 100, which is the international standard now to score wines out of 100. 95 points and above is a gold medal. Obviously a high gold medal would be maybe 96, 97, even 98. Really we would go to 99 and never, in my experience anyway, 100. Below that we have silver ribbons, which are the equivalent of a wine show silver medal, which are between 90 and 94 points. And below that is a bronze ribbon, again equivalent to a wine show bronze medal. So that's how we score the wines, and it's all about, I guess, freedom from faults and authenticity and correctness to style in the first instance, but also it's about how much we like the wine. So it's not a terribly scientific thing. We're not pretending that the 100-point scale is a scientific system. It's more about how much we like the wine, how true it is to its type. And there, of course, I'm referring to what we know about the wine when we're tasting it. The only two things we know about a wine when we're tasting it are the grape variety, or grape varieties if it's a blend, and the vintage. I won't even know whether it's Australian or New Zealand or from some other part of the world. Because we do critique wines from other parts of the world. We review wines from everywhere if they come our way. But of course, being based in Australia, our major emphasis is on the wines of Australia and New Zealand. And of course, we have team members in Australia, four reviewers in Australia and one in New Zealand, and that's the bread and butter of what we do. There are a couple of features that we use which are different to what other reviewers use and what other platforms use, which are, I think, unique to The Real Review. One of them is the top rank badge, and the other one is the top value badge, which you'll see on our reviews on our website. There have to be at least 15 examples of a wine from a certain region, certain grape variety, certain vintage, for the wine to be eligible for a top rank badge. The other one is top value, which is pretty much as you'd expect. It signifies great value for money within its price range. And that's a little red badge which appears in the Real Review website. So that signifies that the wine is particularly good rapport between price and rating. So the question is, how do we judge wine? How do we assess wine? So wines are lined up in glasses and we judge them one by one, taking our time. This is the great thing, the way we do it. We can take as much time as we want, give the wines as much time as we think they need, and not rush the process, because rushing the process you usually end up with a slightly compromised result, and you miss things sometimes. So the first thing to do when we're judging the wine is to use a good glass. We can use quite a different variety of glassware which is suitable for judging wine in, but generally we don't use a bowl size that's bigger than that. That's about right. It's not too small, it's not too large as to be too clumsy. You've got to fit a couple of dozen of them on your table at once, which takes up a bit of space. So the first thing we do is to look at the colour of a wine, of course, and if it's a red wine like this one, we would look at it against a white background, and you can have a very good indication of the colour if the lights are right and you've got something white for the background. Beautiful purple tinge, we know this is a young wine, it's a young red wine, could be a Shiraz, could be a Cabernet, something with a lot of colour. You know, if a wine is very young and the colour doesn't have that limpidity and that lovely purple tinge to it, if it's got, say, a brownish tinge or a brick red tint to it, that might be an indication of premature aging. So it's, colour is important. You can tell a lot by the appearance. If it's a Pinot Noir, for example, and it's really dark and almost black in the glass, that to me is a warning sign. Pinot Noir should be translucent, you should be able to see through it. I always swirl the wine because swirling it coats the interior of the glass. The surface area of the wine is where the volatiles come off, they evaporate, and that's how you can smell wine, because of the volatiles that are coming off and evaporating in the air and becoming available to your nose, to your olfactory receptors. So have a good sniff, and we look at freedom from faults initially, I suppose. Is the wine clean? Is it fresh? Is it youthful if it's a young wine? Is it complex if it's an old wine? Does it have varietal character if we're looking for varietal character? And in Australia we mostly consider that, and in New Zealand we consider mostly that varietal character is an important part of a wine. So if it is a Cabernet Sauvignon, it needs to taste like a Cabernet Sauvignon. If it's a Chardonnay, it should taste like a Chardonnay. The really distinctive varieties like Riesling and Sauvignon Blanc have a very definite personality, and the wines need to display that personality. Within that paradigm, of course, you can have complexities. For example, barrel fermented Chardonnays, barrel fermented Sauvignon Blancs, lees stirring, lees aging, a little bit of reduction from the sulfides. All sorts of things can add to the complexity of the wine. But generally speaking, if it's a young wine, we're looking for freshness, you're looking for fruit, you're looking for intensity and clarity. If it's a wine with some age on it, that's when you start to put more emphasis on complexity. So the next part of the tasting act, of course, is actually the taste. But when you're tasting the wine, the important thing to describe is the body of the wine, the intensity of flavour, its balance, its freshness, its vitality, all of these things. If it's a red wine such as this, is it light-bodied, full-bodied or medium? Does it have a lot of tannin or does it have very little tannin? Is there noticeable oak in the wine to smell and to taste? And particularly if it's a white wine, is the acidity noticeable? Is the acidity too high or too low, or is it just right? We don't really comment on it unless it's noticeably out of balance. But all of these things are part of what we call balance in wine. But the most important constituent is the fruit. And okay, it doesn't need to just taste like simple fruit, like raspberries or cherries. That's lovely, but complexities that go as a layer on top of that make a wine more interesting. And so we're looking for the fruit, we're looking for the freshness, the clarity, but also the complexity that's there, which of course will build as the wine ages if it's a good wine. The last thing we would note, I suppose, is the finish, because the finish is the last thing that you think of when you're tasting a wine. It's the lasting impression that endured after the wine was gone. The important part when you're judging is to stay sober and to stay alert and refreshed. Let me give you an example of the tasting process. Important to spit it out, and spit it out efficiently, so don't retain too much of it in your mouth, because some of that wine, some of every sip that you taste will be absorbed by the membranes of your mouth. So if you don't spit efficiently, it will start to build up. The aftertaste is really important. As I was saying, is the tannin drying it out on the finish, or has it got a lovely seamless flow to it and leave you refreshed and wanting another sip? But I guess the last thing about tasting is, does it have an X factor? Is there something exciting about the wine that really gets you going and excites you? I mean, we're all in the business of wine, whatever aspect of the wine business we're in. We're interested in discovery. We're interested in finding out things that really enthuse us and fill us with excitement and give us pleasure at the same time. So here's a tip for people who are perhaps not professionals in the wine business, but who like to go to wine tastings and taste a lot of wines. If you want to stay sober and you want to drive home afterwards, and I think most of us will want to stay sober, we'd want to taste as much wine as we can without losing our sense of acuity. You need to spit it out. So don't be, at a wine tasting, nobody's fussed, nobody's shy, nobody's going to be shocked if you spit your wine out. That's normal in our game. If you are nervous about spitting, as a lot of people are until they handle it and get to be masters at it, you have to practice in the shower. Like, everybody takes a mouthful of water if they're out swimming, and you spit it out. There's nothing complicated about that. It's the same process. I've seen people who are obviously spitting for the first time, and they go over to the bucket and they just sort of dribble a little bit and it goes all over their chin and maybe over their shirt. But if you practice it in the shower, you'll never do that. You'll never embarrass yourself. So the Real Review, we taste something like 10,000 wines a year and review them online. So there's a lot of data there, there's a lot of information, and we try to make as much use of that information as we can. One way we use it for your benefit and for the benefit of the wine producers is the top wineries, what we call the top wineries of Australia, the top wineries of New Zealand, the top wineries of Great Britain. We also do every year. And this is basically the culmination of a whole year's tasting. And we publish this list of top wineries on the Real Review website, but also for New South Wales people, we have the Sydney Morning Herald, Good Weekend, and we have the Melbourne Age Good Weekend magazines, and they also publish shortened form of our top wineries every year. And at this time of the year, and I'm speaking now in December, not long before Christmas, but we're starting to enter our peak tasting time of the year. Mid-December through to the end of February, we are tasting thousands of wines. We're hard at work while you people are out having a splash in the sea and having your beach holidays. We're hard at work tasting wine, and this is the culmination of a year of the wine industry producing great wines. We like to give as much credit as we can to as many of these excellent wineries. An important feature of our top wineries celebration every year is the way we bring these results to you, to the public. And we have various public events. We have a tasting in Melbourne, a tasting in Sydney, and a tasting in Auckland. The dates for our top wineries events will always be shown on our website, of course, on the events section. And these events are outstanding events. They are showcases of the very best of Australian wine and New Zealand wine. And often we have the winemakers standing behind the counter pouring their wine. We're not trying to have the biggest events of all. These are fairly much boutique events. We have about 30, 35 wineries represented and possibly around about 125 wines. So these are not huge events. These are deliberately focused events, just focusing on the very best that we can find to show the consumer. And they're a great event to come along to. So we encourage you to do that. This is one of our top events of the year, is Top Wineries. It's really an important event for us. Where I'm sitting here is the nerve center of the Real Review. This is where it all happens. This is where the wines all arrive in their boxes and are unpacked and sorted. It all happens in here. This is crowded with wine at the moment. It is stacked high with boxes of wine because this is our peak time of the year for tasting. It's a very exciting time and it's a hard-working time. But the whole point of it is to bring you, the reader, the best possible information we can about what's going on in the wine world, who's making the great wines, who's got the best value, etc., etc. This year, a new thing with the Real Review is we're going to be doing a lot more of these events shot in here in our nerve center, videos, interviews, all sorts of events that we're going to be shooting in here and bringing to you on the website. So in a nutshell, here's our mission. Our mission is to taste all these wines, 10,000 wines a year, so that you don't have to. We make your job of selecting wine easier, and hopefully we make your drinking pleasure greater. And we also help the wineries, of course, who want to get their message out. So this is what we're all about at the Real Review. And we really enjoy what we do. We hope our enthusiasm filters through to you. Here's to the new year, 2025 coming up. More good wine.